Buenos días a todos. Gracias a los panelistas por acompañarnos en este evento. Gracias a ustedes por asistir. Me parece que ya de manera muy clara se explicó de las bondades, de las ventajas intrínsecas que tiene la facturación electrónica y de las bondades que ha traído la tecnología a las administraciones tributarias. En este caso, el panel a mí me gustaría acotarlo a dos conceptos fundamentales. Todas las administraciones tributarias del mundo tienen como objetivo principal, pues, recaudar. Y la recaudación, también en casi todos los países, en más del 95, del 96%, proviene del cumplimiento voluntario de las obligaciones fiscales. En ese sentido, pues es claro que las administraciones tienen que orientarse a fomentar este cumplimiento, aun y cuando existe en nuestra tarea, y digo nuestra porque también yo formo parte de una administración tributaria,
of a tax administration service, but in our job it's also a dual type of activity, because with the use of the technologies, with the use of the electronic services, we are obliged to facilitate the taxpayer the compliance with the obligations, but on the other hand, we're also obliged to have and establish control mechanisms so when any taxpayer does not comply with the obligations, we can react very fast, and with this, we can bring the taxpayer back on track. We've heard about the information, the set of information that we get with the electronic bill. We heard about the tax mailbox, and I would like to talk with the members of this panel about different topics. In the case of Ivan, I want to ask you if you can explain this in detail about your experience in Chile, the behavior of the taxpayers before and after the use of the technology that are providing us with all of this information, and when it's used, when this information is used properly, is intelligent information.
Hello.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I want to clarify something. I was a member and was officer of the tax administration service in Chile. Now I'm in the private sector. So what I'm going to say, it comes from personal experience, and not necessarily I do represent the opinion of the current administration. And I thank you for the opportunity of being here. From my own point of view, the use of the information technology and all the tools such as electronic invoicing, the use of the internet, the tax return, the tax return, makes for a cornerstone of the tax administration service so we can have a good control and surveillance to taxpayers. Obviously, the best business for a tax administration service is to strengthen voluntary compliance from the taxpayers, minimizing any actions with respect of fiscalization and focusing in voluntary tax payments, and not so much to correct the mistakes of the taxpayers. So the use of IT, to facilitate the media, to improve services with the use of the internet, all of this is geared, and this is something that all the tax administration services in the world do. We're looking for the information that comes from the taxpayer. It's validated, and this is quality information, minimizing the mistakes, improving the quality of the information, and facilitating compliance with the payment of taxes, where the taxpayer should not have to assist the tax administration service, but minimizing time to do any type of formalities. It's done through the internet. So basically, with this strategy, the tax administration service looks to take care of these two large problems: to enroll the taxpayer who has the obligation of behaving as such, to pay the taxes, and on the other hand, to minimize the lack of compliance and strengthening the voluntary tax payment. And with this, for a country, the performance of a tax administration service should be of excellence. In this sense, in Chile, we can see the variation in the tax payment behavior from the middle of the 90s, when the income tax return over the internet was started, with the tax authorization service would get from the employers what were the salaries that were paid to the employees, and then the employees, when they would file their taxes, they could see on screen over the internet what were the taxes that the employer had turned in, and they could, the worker, the employee, could have all the benefits, whether they had a mortgage loan. In Chile, they had a tax break because of that, and they can have a faster solution. And with this, the mistakes in the tax returns of the taxpayers went down, because they knew about the information available in the tax administration service with their situation, and made all the formalities easier. So the taxpayer were filing the returns much easier. So in Chile, once we adopted this return, we see when there's any amendment to the tax return, because maybe there's a money that is going to be returned to the taxpayer because of education break, because they spend in private education, the taxpayer base increases automatically. So this makes it easier. And this is reflected in other initiatives that is related with the value-added tax. And then we get to electronic invoicing. One of the things that I've seen, because we started in 2002 with a electronic invoice, and we saw how the taxpayer base increased as the larger groups of buyers would demand from the supplier the use of electronic invoicing. So we saw how the value-added tax collection increased, and then it became more focused, the actions of fiscalization in all the complex cases where there were no mistakes, and the differences in taxes was short. You were talking about a group of formalities that are done electronically in the interaction with the taxpayer. As you know, we have requests for tax return. We offer a guarantee, sometimes a term to pay taxes. Do you do this electronically in Chile? Yes. Basically, in Chile, you can do any administrative formality, you can do it electronically, from the registration of the taxpayer, any interaction with the tax authority. So the only thing that is done in person is for them to get their tax ID number to the office, and then they can get it updated on the web page, and then from there they can start with the trade activities. And they can issue the electronic invoicing for free until they decide what type of activities they're going to be performing. The entire cycle is over the internet. Vinicio, you can comment on this. We would like to hear from you. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank SAT and Amexipac for the opportunity of participating in this event. I'm honored. Second, obviously, Spanish is not my first language, so I'm sorry if I make mistakes in Spanish. Reality in Brazil is a little bit complex because we have three levels of tax administration. We have the nationwide, statewide, and local. And the answer to your question is short, brief, and to the point. It depends. It depends. The level of the authority that we're dealing with at the federal level, everything can be done electronically. At the level of the states, we have 27 states, 8 to 12 maybe, have developed electronically, and some others do not have anything. So it's not a direct response. We have a lot of things that you can do it like they do it in Chile, where everything, all the formalities can be complied with electronically over the internet, and some other things, pretty much nothing. We were saying that federally, you have experience with the electronic mailbox. What can you tell us about the electronic mailbox to have an interaction with the taxpayer? We have some questions that with this electronic mailbox, some of the actions are going to be given notice through this electronic mailbox, and this can be susceptible for going to court. First, we have to say that it's necessary. In the country, there are two laws. Before talking about an electronic mailbox as something that is going to bring legal certainty for the tax authority as well as to the taxpayer. In many countries, it's electronic commerce or e-commerce law, but it's more a law for electronic documents. In this law, we must have certainty that those basic requirements in a document, to be the author, to have a date, the will that is stated in this document was not altered since it was issued, and that the author of a document cannot say that they didn't want to issue the document, that no refutal of the document. And that was in 2001 where the law was issued that created the infrastructure of public keys, where they assume they are true within the code, those documents that are signed within the terms of this law. So they're assumed as true. If anybody has any questions about the document being a true document or real document, they have to prove that it's not. So all the electronic documents in Brazil have a requirement that all the companies have to use the electronic documents that are signed with a digital seal and issued with all the numbers that are necessary for validation. The second law is a law that attributes this electronic mailbox all the necessary functions, a law that would strengthen, saying that all the procedures that are published in this mailbox have the same value that any printed documents. When both laws merge, have the certainty that you're asking about. If a taxpayer, once they get notice through the electronic tax mailbox, they can reject the notice or the effects of the notice giving through the courts. We have both laws that support it. That's how you defend it in court. Yeah, that's true. You have the possibility of being successful, of the taxpayer being successful in challenging. It's very small. So as a judge, as a son of a judge, I know that you can expect anything from the courts, but there's a possibility, always a possibility. So there could be success in that type of claim. And our experience to date is no. Very few actions once you go into court. Once they go to court, very few actions are confirmed in favor of the taxpayer.
Paul, could you share with us the experience you have with respect to the benefits that this offers to the taxpayer. We have talked about the certainty to the authority that the inputs we have, not only for auditing purposes, but also to do any coactions against the debtors. But now let's talk about the benefits it offers taxpayers, the use of IT, such as taxation, box mail, electronic invoice, all these activities that can be done through the web. Me disculpo, no hablo español. Antes que nada, quiero agradecer a Mexipac y a SAD y al señor Núñez por su amable invitación al Internal Revenue Service, al IRS de Estados Unidos. Déjeme poner un poco de contexto. Como dicen, nuestro sistema de administración tributario está similar a lo que se tiene en Brasil. Tenemos autoridades locales, estatales, departamentos de ingresos y también a nivel federal. Específicamente, hay muchísimas alianzas que existen con las autoridades locales y estatales. Y es similar a lo que dijo Iván, solamente quiero agregar que la premisa de nuestro sistema de administración fiscal se basa en cumplimiento voluntario. Desde su origen se basó en este concepto. Así es que mucho de nuestras entregas digitales de actividades se basa en concientización, educación y tratar de promover el cumplimiento voluntario a través de servicios en línea y conciencia digital. En cuanto a las leyes fiscales y reglamentos, estas cambian y evolucionan casi cada año y muchas de nuestras leyes están promulgadas por temas socioeconómicos que existen en el país y un ejemplo perfecto es que ya hicieron referencia, es el Obamacare, es esta ley y a partir de este año cuando se hace la conciliación y el contribuyente presenta su declaración, hay una conciliación con base al reembolso que reciben en cuanto a los beneficios que recibían por su seguro médico. Así es que con el paso de los años, varios créditos y ventajas se han aplicado por parte de la administración y otros legisladores han usado nuestro código fiscal para darlo. Y lo estoy diciendo todo esto para poner un contexto en cuanto a los servicios digitales y en línea, porque cada año es un reto con respecto al cambio de las leyes fiscales y la normativa. Así es que nos hemos enfocado muchísimo en lo que hemos hecho en los servicios en línea. Y para darles un ejemplo, tenemos 1.8 millones de visitas este último año en los servicios electrónicos. Recibimos más o menos 85% de las declaraciones electrónicas por vía electrónica de personas físicas, 50% de la parte comercial, industrial, empresas, sociedades, personas que tienen más bien el sector comercial. En cuanto a lo que se hace en la evolución, reforzamos muchas de las alianzas a través de la comunidad de profesionales fiscales. Quiero mencionar que el 70% de todas las declaraciones de impuestos se nos presenta a través de intermediarios, a los que yo llamo profesionales tributarios. Así es que muchos de ellos trabajan en canalizar nuestra actividad a través de esos proveedores de servicio, estos intermediarios. Adicionalmente, la comunidad de software tributario proporciona el software que se utiliza para preparar la declaración fiscal y se enfoca principalmente en nuestras actividades. Así es que mucha de la interacción que hacemos entre el contribuyente, ya sea persona física o moral, ocurre entre el intermediario y el cliente o el contribuyente. Muchas de las interacciones que ocurren directamente con el SAT es después de que se presentó la declaración, ya cuando se hace una auditoría o una fiscalización. Hemos trabajado muy de cerca con los profesionales tributarios, muchos intermediarios, las asociaciones a nivel estatal que tienen esos servicios para ayudar a sus clientes y los servicios se proporcionan o directamente a través de su canal de servicios y en muchos casos son servicios que nosotros damos directamente en nuestro sitio en Internet. ya sea registrarse para lo que llamamos el número de identificación fiscal o firmar lo que llamamos un acuerdo de pago a plazos. Seguramente muchos países tienen algo similar. El Person Núñez habló de darles a facilidades a aquellos que tienen dificultad de pagos, entonces darles canales para poner facilidades de pagar esto a plazos o en aplazamientos. Adelante. Así es que en muchos casos, incluso un cambio de dirección, pago directo, que sé que mayoría de los pagos de actividades vienen a través de terceros. Todas las declaraciones, ninguna se manda directamente por parte del contribuyente, todas se mandan por un tercero, así que muchos de los canales directos por Internet se manejan con intermediarios. Así es que muchos de los modelos ajustan este modelo de terceros para educar al contribuyente al momento de presentarlo, porque la actividad de cumplimiento y aplicación ocurre en el momento que recibimos la declaración. Así es que lo que podamos hacer para modificar esto y asegurarse que ese comportamiento, que entiendan exactamente qué se espera de ellos y que cumplan con sus obligaciones, que no paguen ni más ni menos y que cumplan con su obligación, es la carga más sencilla que podemos eliminar y administrar. One more question, Paul, if you know the answer. One more question, please. With respect of refunds, I understand that some are made automatically. Evidently, this is a service provided to taxpayers. Could you tell us about the procedure, how it operates in the States and the response times? It is a service that definitely depends on digital media and electronic media. I would like to know what's your opinion in this regard. En cuanto a los reembolsos, en promedio tenemos 143 millones de declaraciones al año y 72% reciben reembolsos. La gran mayoría se les regresa por medios digitales, por depósitos directos. Trabajamos indirectamente con las instituciones bancarias. Regularmente, antes en papel tomaba 45 días. En este último año pudimos recibir la declaración, tramitarla, publicarla o ponerle lo que nosotros describimos contra una cuenta maestra, a donde se está toda la información del contribuyente y darle reembolso al contribuyente con depósito directo en 6 a 7 días. Lo que lo hace más difícil es que en los últimos 5 a 6 años los créditos adicionales que los legisladores incorporaron, ya sea que diferentes leyes, Affordable Care Act u otras leyes, han incentivado a cierto grupo de personas que causan fraude en nuestra área. Así es que en los últimos 5 o 6 años hemos puesto gran empeño en lo que llamamos como productividad pre-reembolso. O sea que cuando se recibe la declaración, establecemos ciertos modelos de lógica con base a reglas comerciales, características de declaraciones que hemos visto en un periodo dado para caracterizar una declaración en particular para saber si tiene elementos fraudulentos o no. Después ponemos a un lado esa declaración y hacemos una revisión secundaria. Así es que en cuanto a calcular los reembolsos, hace 5 a 6 años siempre la necesidad era tratar de dar el reembolso al contribuyente lo antes posible. Y desde el año pasado reembolsamos 277 mil millones de dólares. Imagínense, para muchos contribuyentes el reembolso es el cheque más grande que reciben en cualquier año dado. Así es que muchas personas estaban interesadas en recibirlos rápidamente. Es que tuvimos que equilibrar lo que esperaban ellos, sus necesidades, sobre el reembolso, porque ya habíamos puesto esta expectativa y que las iban a recibir una vez al año. Así es que en cuanto a las... En papel todavía le entregamos a 45 días, pero estamos ahora en 90% en depósitos directos. Trabajamos muy de cerca con la industria de la banca para identificar actividades fraudulentas, pero cada vez que presentamos un nuevo crédito es un desafío para nosotros aplicarlo por la peculiaridad de los cambios en las leyes fiscales. Thank you, Paul. Ivan, with respect to this point that we were discussing in the break, with respect to the refunds, what would you tell us about with respect to the use of technology and a service that is provided to taxpayers? Today, Chile is doing refunds through bank deposit, and it is processed as fast as possible as long as it comes from a tax return posted through the internet. And as Paul was saying, one of the difficult things is to manage clients' expectations or the taxpayers' expectations with respect to receiving their funds rapidly. But in Chile, it's been more than 10 years that we've been doing these returns, these refunds, and doing them rapidly. If there is any event in Chile indicating what is the tax administration in the country is the revenue operation, where you declare the annual tax, and most of the taxpayers receive a refund the following month when presenting the return. Within this month, after presenting the tax return, if the taxpayer makes a tax return the first 20 days, they will get the refund of 10 days of the following month. If the tax return is presented in the next 10 days, the refund will be around the 20th, or if the return is presented the 10 first days of the month, the refund will be done the last 10 days of the month, but the administration cannot exceed these terms. And this part of the service we give to the taxpayer, and that is part of the promoting the use of internet that they will get this refund before. So this is the way it works. The return posted through internet to then be able to refund the money. And on the other hand, with respect to value-added tax, in Chile we export close to 50% of our GDP. So therefore we need a value-added tax refund on exports. So this means that all of the value-added tax supported in the purchases or the amount corresponding to local sales must be refunded to the exporter. And this operation is done as following. The exporter makes the application, and those who are regular exporters, that we have seen them for years, that every month they request a value-added tax refund. This refund is made the day after the application is submitted. But why can we do it this way? Because we have information coming from customs saying that last month they did these exports for this amount. We have the information from taxpayers himself, where we can make the edit on their sales book with respect to exports or the letters of credit and everything that covers any export activity. And with this we can do it. And together with this we have a preventive fiscalization process with which the taxpayer will have audits every X time with respect to the purchase and sales activities to make sure that the credits refunded are well refunded. But this is also part of a type of partnership we have with the taxpayers and the tax administration, where there is kind of a commitment of cooperating adequately and having all the information transparent to the tax administration. This is the steps we follow, and we try to do them as fast as possible. Thank you, Ivan. Vinicius, in the tax cycle, I believe that all administrations have a program for the better compliance, with the idea of having more and more taxpayers complying voluntarily with their obligations. In the case of Brazil, how has technology and electronic media impacted this compliance program? Well, we have two directions in this area of improving voluntary compliance of tax obligations in Brazil. On the first hand, in 2004, we started and it was actually implemented in 2007 with all the digital books and digital accounting started those years. So several companies are now mandated to present to the tax administration all their books with all their operations and transactions, replacing the accounting books on the one hand and the tax books on the other hand. On the other extreme, we have documents themselves, the invoices. There are plenty of type of invoices, commercial invoices they use between two companies to pay value tax, or the services invoices, or electric power and sales invoices to the end user. And each of them have different characteristics technologically as well as the way of using information. So there are different technologies from the supply of information for the administration. Actually, by the end of the year, we have all this information, and for which the head of SAT has already mentioned. So we already have the possibility of dispensing certain information or systems because we have information in our data bank or affidavits. So what we always say, with this we increase the perception of risk. The taxpayer knows that his information is in our hands. So we'll try to comply voluntarily. Those who are good, 95–97% of the good ones, will try to comply timely so he won't be penalized. And we have to raise a point. I generally don't hear people speaking about this. Many of the corporations do not comply, but not because they don't want to, but because there are errors in their information systems. And here what I said, it is not that they don't know what's going on. It is not that they want to cause an error, but the systems have errors, have failures. And these failures occur when we pass our extensive audit systems, when they process and we compare the information, or the digital books or the invoices issued by third parties against certain taxpayer. So this is something that I believe that many countries forget, I think, when they are starting to implement their extensive auditing programs based on in digital information. That it is necessary to improve the country's technical capability of those supplying the IT platform for the accounting of the companies. This is an axiom of technology. Among garbage, there is garbage. The data is not correctly entered to the system, it won't reach correctly to the accounting system. If it doesn't reach correctly to the accounting system, it will get wrong to the taxing system, and the result will be a penalization. So the main message in this point of increasing the perception of risk and consequently higher voluntary compliance is this precisely. It is necessary to take into account the quality of information of the data bank, the description of the merchandise, of what is applicable to this specific transaction. And finally, I'm coming to the answer. What we have done is first, not to start by penalizing. So first, speaking specifically in the case of the state I work for, it wouldn't be the mailbox, but something similar to the tax mailbox. We present the information of a taxation statement of account of the taxpayer, where we present his invoices, the ones that he has issued, the ones have issued to his name. We cross this information with his affidavits and digital books. So he has time to correct the information before it reaches the taxation authorities. And the fact of presenting this information increases voluntary compliance. So with all this information, do you create any risk model? In one of the presentations, we heard that the universe of taxpayers can be documented by segments, those that are voluntarily compliant, those are comply only because if they are detected, and another group that will never comply. They will always be in this risk line waiting to be detected or not. With this information, do you form any registry of risky taxpayers? Yes, definitely. We have 3 classes of the way we use this information. The first one is what we call network or net, as if you would go fishing, to have the best science of detecting that something is going on. And this is like an extensive auditing process that I believe all those services have. Then we have the statistical processes that cross over this information against the average of this type of taxpayer. So it is more directly to analyze who will be subject to an audit. And last, the sector of tax intelligence, which is the sector that is concerned with the criminal side, with the side of fraud as an institution, that the individuals and entities get together just with the objective of committing a fraud. So the intelligence is a separate entity, a separate sector that works based on the same data but with a different objective in mind. Fine, so with this we conclude the panel. Thank you, Paul, thank you, Ivan, thank you, Vinicius, for sharing your experiences and knowledge. So we thank the participation of our panel members in this first international forum of digital tax administration and electronic